Just I want to thank Mr. Hanno for his comments. It's very interesting and lots of points. Aviation is very complex thing. There's a lot of systems, a lot of interference, and a lot of industries also. So these the people who cares about the aircraft and who cares about the people who work on the aircraft and the people who work on the ground. And on the ground we have a lot of companies, supervisors, handlers, and airlines also.
An integrated system.
Very complex. Just to mention, in Morocco, we start had a regulation for the handling, for example, just until 2005. It is our first regulatory when we liberalize the handling and we open for the foreigners. So that you know that all the time for 60 years it was just one operator of handling, and
so now the market is open.
And now the market for open, and we open another time on the last year, and now we have very great operators in Morocco. They are very.
But at the same time, you put the regulations for them.
We have now the regulation, and everything is going, alhamdulillah.
And is it in the direction that Mr. Hanno is suggesting, in the direction of IOSA or ISBA, or how are these regulations?
For ISBA, I don't know. Frankly, I don't know what it is about. Maybe it is new. It is a new stone. I don't know about ISBA. But and it's I think that ISBA is still regulated for IATA. It is IATA. I have no idea about ISBA. You can explain to me. Sorry.
The ISBA is the International Standards for Business Aviation Handlers. It's concerning. It's the counterpart of the ISBA is the ISAGO, the IATA Audit Safety. IATA Safety Audit for ground operations.
Maybe the regulatory agencies will start looking at this now.
Exactly.
And compare to see which
and we have to take in account this.
Yes, please. And as also commenting on Louis regarding the training, everybody's looking for training for above the wings, but nobody's looking for training under the wings. And this is one of the things that really has to be. It's only internal training within the house itself. But there are no educational training centers for ground services.
Good opportunity for investors.
Exactly.
In fact, that is a very interesting point. In my past, some of you may remember a company called Page Avjet Corporation, an old maintenance and modification facility that did quite a lot of head of state work for the region. And then they had a few FBOs, and I joined them early on in my career as risk manager in safety and quality, and ended up as helping create the company called Signature Flight Support. And I was Senior VP of Operations for them in the early stages when we created the company. And one of the things that was interesting is that everything that Page Avjet and Butler Aviation and Hughes Aviation and Van Dusen and some of the other companies that we acquired along the way were doing is they were doing the same old thing. And that was, we were just selling fuel, hitting airplanes. We had a knack of damaging airplanes, and just providing mediocre to bad service. And people were paying for it because we were the only game in town. And one of the things we tried to do when we created Signature was to break the model. Our motto was, if it ain't broke, break it. Change everything, because the industry has to change. And the way we handle aircraft has to change. And that was at the beginning in the early 90s, really the beginning of, we would like to say and like to take credit for it, the change in the perspective in ground handling with FBOs and so forth. And like anything else, it does require vision, focus, looking into those areas, but also finding the vendors to support you. So for training and ground handling, sir, I agree with you 100%. There are some organizations that are providing it, but they're not very global. They're more market-centric.
Localized.
Exactly. So this, I think, is a wonderful opportunity for a MENA region, for a MENA workshop, in fact, about setting a standard for what ground handling, underwing services ought to be like. And I can tell you, I can speak from accident investigations that I've done over my entire career and handling matters with insurance companies, the number of in creative ways that people can damage an airplane and take your aircraft out of service is remarkable. But the ground handlers, some of them, don't get it. They don't understand it, and really we need a standard. So this was, I think, a great takeaway. Very good idea.
I think we have a question.
George Galanopoulos, London Executive Aviation. I would like to touch on Luis's point earlier on being our duty to report any safety issues to the authorities. I totally agree with that, Luis. But the point is, what do the authorities do after we report it? And if we look in Europe, for example, which we mainly operate, we get ram-checked by SAFA on a very regular basis. I think we probably get about 5 a week now, which is great, no problems at all. But you get a SAFA inspector coming in and taking your load sheet, and you say you want 1 kilo out, or you got a scratch on the winglets, or your static wick is missing, which is fine, safety issues, but minor really. But the most important issue, what they don't ask, is this a legal flight or not? And yeah, I think we have reported issues to the UK CAA. Nothing is done about it, because their view is the SAFA inspector have no power to do anything if it's an illegal flight or not. And even when they identify an illegal flight, very little they can do about it. But by the time it goes to court, I know in the UK previous cases, they won 1 in a year, and there was a £2,000 fine, which is really ridiculous.
Thank you. I'll get Mr. Nabil's opinion on, I don't know if something like this was experienced here, whereby people will report some incidents like this, and how does the Civil Aviation Authority react to such incident reporting?
Okay, so for SAFA, you know, Morocco is part of SAFA. It is the first country outside of Europe, part of SAFA like observer. It is after the signature of Open Skies Agreement in 2006. We use the same standards of SAFA here in Morocco. Also, we use for the foreign aircraft, foreign airlines also. But for the reports, as you say, the SAFA agents they have no power to make aircraft AOG, but they send, but they have the power to send this report to the countries, and it will be a problem for the airline. It will be checking for any arrival. This is a problem, and we exchange the information. This is the data between the authorities, and we exchange the information, and we follow the situation of that aircraft.
Of that particular airplane.
Yes, that particular.
Bill, do you have anything to comment on this?
I think it's an excellent point, and I think the power of MEBAA and the power of MEBAAs and the associations that MEBAA has with the NBAA and the Flight Safety Foundation. Again, like anything else, if we cannot identify the order of magnitude of this problem and what the risk to the industry is, nothing's going to change. So, sir, I appreciate the fact that you do this, you report them, but if nothing is done, what that means is that Civil Aviation Authority does not recognize the magnitude of the problem. So what's the takeaway? To me, it would be that we need to form a study group and determine what the financial impact is to the industry within the region, the charter or business aviation business within the region, to identify case studies that might be sanitized to protect the alleged innocent, and then present this to regulatory bodies via, MEBAA, NBAA, and so forth, the other associations linked to it as BAO, and the Flight Safety Foundation, and see if we can get some traction. Because again, we talk about this in these forums, but we have to get this message beyond us to the people who can make change, make something different. But we have to identify the problem. What is the problem? Is it anecdotal, one-off, two-off, it's just bothering me in one particular city? Or is this something that's systemic? We see it day in and day out, and it is having an impact on the business. Because ultimately, it will be an embarrassment when one of those aircraft, and it's happened. We've had it in the United States. Somebody mentioned Teterboro earlier. You might recall the Challenger that took off or attempted to take off out of Teterboro and went into a warehouse. So that was an illegal charter. And because of that, because of the uproar of that event, regulations changed within the United States. And it took some time, but it did take a very media-focused event to help draw that conclusion. There were a few others, of course, that supported that, but it has to be brought to the attention of the public for something to have an impact on change.
Thank you, Lou. I think from the discussions that were brought forward, I think the recommendation of the last MEBAA in Jeddah of seriously trying to push and educate the clients through the ismyflightlegal.com, for instance, program, stuff like this, is very important in limiting these illegal flights. And as we've heard, that safety, regulations, adaptation for the business aviation industry is a very important topic. I would like to thank both Mr. Nabil and Lou for being with us and for shedding light and give us some information about the regulations. And I think we're ready to take another break. Again, recharge. Please help yourself to the refreshments and keep your energy level high. We have one more panel to go through. And we'll see you back here at 1 o'clock. Thank you. And shukran jazeelan. Thank you very much. Thanks, Lou.